Today I'll be showing you how I apply nail polish. The first thing you need is a good quality natural nail base coat. That's very important to have a good quality one, as it helps the nail polish to adhere to the nail properly. This is the one that I always use, which is OPI Natural Nail Base Coat, and I always apply 2 coats of this. Now I don't ever use a nail hardener or nail strengthener because they can make the nails very weak and brittle. Initially they might seem that they make your nails tougher, but actually over time they make them very brittle and more likely to break. So I find 2 coats of a good quality base coat is sufficient. It adds a little bit of strength to the nail plate and helps it adhere to its polish to adhere to the nail, and helps to protect your nail from staining due to dark colours. Now the first thing to know is how to load up the brush properly. Now first of all, I bring the brush straight out of the bottle, and then I simply wipe the front of the brush against the neck of the bottle, but leaving the polish on the underside of the brush. And I use that method for both the base coat and the coloured polish, and top coat also. And I find that that leaves just about the right amount of polish on the brush. Sometimes you may want to just dab very slightly, just 1 dab on the neck of the bottle from the other side, if it's a particularly dense polish and there's seems to be a lot on the brush. So I just dab just once and then start. So loading up the brush as I described, I then dab just 1 blob on the nail about there. The reason for that is it just adds that little bit of polish onto the nail. It just helps the polish to just glide on the nail at pretty much the right amount. So, blob, then take it up to the cuticle and pull back, up to the cuticle and pull back, up to the cuticle and pull back. And then I always cap the ends, the tip of the nail, and then smooth it out again. Show you again on this nail, but this time I'm going to do it in slow motion for you. Now the ease of application does depend on the polisher that you use. I always use good quality polishers like Orly, Essie, OPI, Nails Inc is one of my favourites again. Now I have fairly wide nails, so I find nail polishers with thin brushes quite challenging. The Orly brush quite often is quite small and thin, but not always. It depends on the actual polish. Different formulas, they sometimes have slightly different brushes, and very often older polishers that I've had in the cupboard for quite a while do tend to have thinner brushes. I think these days they are making them with wider brushes, which is a lot easier to use. This is an OPI, and OPI pretty much have the same size brushes on all their polishers, which is a mid-size brush. Now the modern Essies are really good. They all come with a wider brush now, but this is one of the older ones that I have, and as you can see, this has got a very thin brush, and this I find quite difficult to apply. You can still do it, but you probably need to do an extra coat because it just goes on too thinly. So I much prefer the wider brushes because you can do it in 2 or 3 swipes. This is a more modern Essie brush. As you can see, it's got a lovely wide brush, and as you apply it, it spreads out beautifully. Much, much easier to use. And Nails Inc have lovely wide brushes. Absolute pleasure to apply with the Nails Inc. So I've now applied 2 coats of the base coat, and I shall start with the coloured polish. So the same process as before. I shall just show you again how I load the brush. So again, make sure that it's well into the bottle, and as you pull it out of the bottle, wipe the top side against the neck of the bottle. And this is now going to be applied first to my pinky, so I don't want too much on the brush, so I will just dab just once to the side before I start. If it's on a longer nail or wider nail, I wouldn't do that, but the pinky is quite thin and small, so we don't want to overload it, and you'll end up then flooding the cuticle and making a mess, which is more difficult to clean up. And as before, one dab, then take it as close to the cuticle line as we can, but we don't want to flood the cuticle. So I always leave a little bit of a gap, and then cap the ends and then smooth over. As you can see here, I've left a little bit of the nail unpainted around the cuticle. That's very important because you don't want it to come too close to the cuticle, as it will flood the cuticle. At the moment it may look a little bit jagged there, but that's not a problem because I'm going to clean up in between coats. I shall clean up with some acetone and a little brush like this. I shall show you briefly how I do it on here, but I do have another video that goes into clean up in more detail, and I'll put the link to that video in the description. Now I use this arm cushion to rest my hand on. You can use a paper towel, a roll of paper towel. That will do the same job, but it's quite handy to be able to rest your hand on something. Now it's a little bit more tricky on the thumb, but what I do is I rest my thumb on my first finger here, like this, so it has stability, it's not wafting about in the wind. And then I often rest my pinky on my first finger so that I have leverage and stability. A dab. Cupping the ends well. So I shall leave that to dry for a few minutes, 5 minutes maybe, and then I shall briefly show you how to clean up. So as you can see, after capping the ends, I have got a little bit on the skin, but that's not a problem because I'll be able to clean that up. I will also clean up around the cuticle line. So I shall use my little brush and some 100% acetone in a pump bottle. As I said before, I will leave the link to the video on how to clean up your nails with all the information on these products in the description. Okay, that's cleaned up. So now we'll apply the second coat. So the same process. Now you can apply a little bit more polish on the second coat. The first coat is just a base really. So you don't want to apply it too thickly, but sometimes you'll want to apply a bit more on the second coat, particularly if you're only applying 2 coats with this one, as with this one, because it's a fairly thick polish. If you're doing 3 coats, because it's fairly thin, you can do another medium-sized coat and then a thicker one for the final third coat. So again, wipe the top side of the brush against the neck of the bottle. Dab, go to the line and pull back. And it's a lot easier the second coat because you've got a line to go to that you've cleaned up from the first coat. Now I should just rest my hand like that for a few minutes to let it dry a little bit before I do the thumb. Otherwise, as you turn your hand to do the thumb, it might pool on one side. And then I'm going to leave my thumb in that position for a few minutes also. So now that's dried, I'm going to do my second clean up. So that's all cleaned up, ready for the top coat. Now I always use a fast dry top coat because in my opinion it's a lifesaver. If you don't use a fast dry top coat, you'll find that it will take quite a long time for it to be properly dry. And you may think it's dry and end up doing something and it will smudge your nail polish, or say you go to bed and you get sheet patterns on your nails. But I find with a good quality fast dry top coat, it really is a lifesaver. Within a couple of minutes it's dry to the touch. You still need to be fairly careful for the next hour or so. But after that, then it's pretty much hardened. This is an Essie one called Good to Go, which this is the one that seem to be using at the moment. I have used one from Cuticle, which is, it doesn't actually say that it's a fast dry top coat. I think it's called a high gloss top coat, but it is a fast dry top coat. That's my favourite, but here in France it's quite difficult to obtain that. So I tend to buy some of those from time to time when I go back to the UK to see family, then I'll stock up on that. Another one that's easily available is called Poche. This is a very fast dry top coat, but I do find sometimes it makes the nail polish shrink. So you get shrinkage around the sides and by the cuticle line there. So I don't use this one very often. Not so much on lighter colours, but it's quite noticeable on darker colours sometimes. So again, the same process. This time I will just glide it across in one action. I don't put the dab, I just glide it across easily and fairly quickly, because as I said, it's a fast dry top coat, so you want to be fairly quick with this. And then cap the ends well, and then just smooth over. Making sure that it's well dipped into the bottle so that it's well saturated. That's been a couple of minutes and it's now touch dry. So the thing to do now is to apply some cuticle oil. I put a drop on each nail and just very gently massage it in around the cuticle and over the polish, because it helps to dry the polish a little bit more. And it fills in, there are pores in the polish, it fills those in and just helps it to dry and to become more flexible as possible. And on the underneath of the nails too. So that's it. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.